Welcome to SibSpot. Today's stories feature more entitled parents. The first story is by That Goofy Random Kid. My Karen of a neighbor says she's entitled to my yard while I'm away. I'm 27 and female, and I live in a rather nice neighborhood near the middle. My neighbor, who we'll call Entitled Mother, has a large dog and a rather destructive son, who we'll call Entitled Kid. I have a pretty good financial situation, and I live alone because the house was passed down to me in the will. It's a pretty big yard compared to Karen's yard, which is almost half the size. I have no gate for the yard, leaving it open for any pets or animals to come right in. I work from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m., so I'm gone for a long while during the day. Karen is the type to do a lot of gardening, so she doesn't like Entitled Kid in the yard with all the tools. One day, she asked me if I would allow her son to play in my yard while I was at work. It couldn't cause any harm, could it? I accepted, but I did tell her that her son would have to be gone by the time I was back. And all went well until I got my first cat. Keep in mind, Entitled Kid would always bring his dog over with him to play. I named my new Ginger cat, well, Ginger. Ginger loved to bask out in the sun with the Entitled Kid and dog until one day I found that she wasn't outside. In fact, she was inside with a bite mark. I rushed her to the vet immediately, where she was treated and wore some kind of bandage wrap around her waist for the next week or so. I checked the cameras only to see Entitled Kid trying to move Ginger out of her general spot so that he could sit there, and she swiped at him, scaring him off. It seemed that Entitled Kid's dog did not take kindly to this, and the mark was not a bite mark, but a swipe mark from the dog. I presented this info to Karen, who denied it and said, "He's just a kid, and Ginny is fine." I reminded her that it was Ginger, and told her that neither her son nor her dog were allowed on my property again. She threw an absolute tantrum and told me that they should be entitled to my yard when I was away because, after all, you can't just let it go to waste. I then reassured her of my decision, to where she said, word for word, "Ma'am, you need to leave." I'm so confused. I'm considering my options, and I think that small claims court is a bit too much for this. What am I supposed to do? Most of the comments warn OP about liability. If something bad happens to the kid on their property, even if they aren't home, or even the dog, they have to pay for medical bills or vet bills. It's your yard. It's completely reasonable to say no. They can't use it. If you don't want them there, they can't use it. Story 2 is by Big Old Cheese. My mom, with no driver's license, rages and guilt trips because I didn't want to drive her around. I'm an 18 female, and my mom is 38. She got a DUI and lost her license several months ago. Today she comes in my room and asked if I'd go somewhere unspecified with her, and she preferred if I drive. I said I didn't want to. I was tired and my head hurt. I had already ran an errand with her an hour or two prior. I drove. She mumbled stuff about it being my fault if she gets arrested and left. Whatever. Then she sends me several mean texts, presumably while driving. I'm copying and pasting them here. "I'm fixing to be done going out of the way for a grown person that can't be bothered to stand up out of bed. Real life is fixing to smack you, and there ain't gonna be nobody catering to you. Everything you have is handed to you, but you can't be bothered to drive a vehicle the few times I've asked you to. You're tired from being awake for 3 hours. I don't ask you for much, other than to drive a couple times a week, and that's too much. Because I'm tired, I go to bed after all of y'all and get up before y'all. I get less sleep than anyone in the house, and I still have to, but I'm scaling back on my responsibilities. If you can say no, then I'm going to learn from you and do the same." If I've learned anything from people with drinking problems over the years, is that they love to blame other people than take any accountability for their own problems. They point fingers all the time, rather than looking at themselves and their lives, and that sounds like that's what's happening here. She wants you to feel bad for her own problems that she created. You're the problem, not her, in her eyes. She is, of course, wrong. Our next story is by Workingtons. Was I being rude when I told my mom she'd raised an entitled man-child? I'm not sure this post fits here because even though I think my mom can be entitled, she wasn't acting it here. My brother was. I'm a male, 17, and I told my mom, 44, that she raised an entitled man-child, my brother, who is a 20-year-old male. When my brother was in high school, he used to get away with everything. He skipped school almost every day for 3 years. He bullied multiple kids when he did end up going to school, and she didn't even punish him when he threw a brick through the window of a public bus. I'm willing to excuse his past behavior because he was just a kid, but he's just gotten worse. There was a time period where he had gotten better and even got a job for a few months, which he wasted his income on alcohol, but who am I to judge him? It's his money. But eventually he quit his job because he didn't like the boss. I'm not even kidding. He had no reason other than he didn't like the boss. This previous year, my older brother, who's 23, moved out, and we all switched rooms because I used to share the room. Well, the 20-year-old had his own room. Whatever, I don't care about that. My room is small in comparison to the room he's in. But they made me move out of the room I was in for the small room because he hated that they were favoring me. I honestly don't care about the size of my room. If he would have asked, I would have given it to him, but he didn't. He threw a tantrum about it until he got what he wanted. Now he sits on his Xbox all day, screaming at kids over Fortnite and being so loud. This has been going on for years, but it's just gotten worse now and he's in the bigger room. My mom asked him to calm down or just be quieter countless times, but he just refuses to. My mom has decided to combat this by making me do everything that he should. Last month, she called me because she was shouting for me and I had headphones in because my brother had complained that I hadn't taken his socks down and put them in the washer. She actually shouted at me for not doing his laundry. I told her that if he cares that much, then he could do it. But she gave me an hour lecture about how I was being disrespectful and I should do things I promised, even though I never said I would. About an hour ago, she came upstairs and told us that she didn't want to cook tonight, so we would have to do something for ourselves, which I told her I was fine with. When he found out, he threw a tantrum and said he didn't want to, and I yelled from my room that if he cares that much, then he can cook, and he said he didn't know how to. And I said, well, tough, you need to learn and stop complaining. My mom told me that I could cook something for the both of us, which I said, absolutely not. I'm sick of cleaning up after him and that he was an adult. He said that I don't do anything in the house and that I was lazy. He hadn't left his room in 2 weeks and hadn't done chores since he was 12. He attacked my mom with the same accusation. When I got downstairs, my mom told me I was out of line and I blew up at her and told her it's not my fault she raised an entitled man-child and I have to clean up after him because he refuses to clean his room. She gave me another lecture, which turned into me making food for him. OP, you need to save your money up and move out as soon as you can. Your older brother sounds pathetic, probably depressed as well. Some people just can't function as normal human beings and use games as an escape from life. Leave home as soon as possible. Make it clear to your mother that this treatment is why you're so eager to not be there anymore. Our next story is by Just Jay. Karen wants me to leave water park because of my tattoos. So since it has finally started to warm up, and some of my friends, all 19 to 22-year-olds, decided to go on a road trip, we decide the appropriate thing to do is go to a water park and a theme park that were right next to each other, and spend a few days out there for spring break. So we get the theme park out of the way first and have a good time there, and a few days later we head for the water park. So here's the thing. It's a water park, so obviously I'm going to have my shirt off for a large amount of the time. I also happen to have a few tattoos. Not to the point where my whole body is essentially covered, but a good amount. I have one on my wrist that is barely even noticeable, which is some Japanese writing. The other one is on my other wrist, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it basically wraps around my wrist and has some lines coming out of it. It's way better than it sounds, I swear. Third and final one is the most noticeable since it's a big tattoo of a cross. Anyway, we get there and the first day goes well. It's a huge water park, so we obviously want to ride all the rides. So I'm walking back to our table from the bathroom, and when I'm almost there, this lady looking like she's in her mid-40s walks up and stops me. I'm a bit confused, so I just wait a minute before just saying, "Yeah?" And she immediately says that she has kids here and she doesn't want to see that. So I don't know what she's referring to, and hoping nothing is sticking out of my shorts, she immediately points to one of my tattoos on my wrist. That! My tattoo? Is there anything wrong with it? Yes, this is a place for kids and I don't want you influencing them to get one of these things. So I'm not really annoyed, just confused since this is a place where 90% of the people have their shirts off and at least a few of them will have a tattoo of some kind. So I tell her that. This is a public place and everyone has their shirt off. A good amount of them have tattoos. Of course, everything I'm saying in this isn't word for word since I can't remember every single word, but that's basically how it went. She completely ignores what I say and tells me to put my shirt on, which I obviously say no to. She tells me to put it on or she's gonna call security. I tell her to do it and she walks off. I go back to my table and sit down with my friends, and they were literally watching everything go down, and I'm a bit nervous since even though I know I wasn't in the wrong, I still don't want to get in trouble with security. About 5 minutes later, when me and my friends go into another slide, she comes running up to us with a security guard behind her. She tells him that I wasn't supposed to have them out, and he was just as confused as I was since he didn't see anything wrong, and she didn't say specifically it was the tattoos. He asks her what she's talking about, and she gets even more mad and points to one of my tattoos. Those! He asks her what's wrong with it, and she goes off on both of us, saying how I shouldn't have those in a kid's place and she doesn't want her kids seeing this. He apologizes for her and tells her to stop bothering me. She storms off and I continue with my trip and my friends. I saw her a few more times throughout the trip, but I don't think she saw me. Push past her and ignore her. She can harp and scream all she wants. Crazy ladies 100% deserve to be ignored for the nut jobs they are. Story session is over for today. I hope you enjoyed. Please consider clicking like or subscribe if you enjoy this content so more people can find their way here. Until we meet again, have an ideal day.